welcome everyone. And I'm really excited to be giving this presentation today to share our experience at Bridging Voice and our toolbox with all of you. Our mission, as Trinity mentioned, is to ensure that everyone be able to communicate and access their technology as best as they can. And sometimes this goal can only be achieved by making customizations to the available technology. And that's what today's presentation is all about. Some of the customizations I'll be demonstrating today, they make access and communication a little bit easier, less frustrating, less fatiguing. And some of the customizations I'll be showing are ones that literally can give communication back to someone who thought they wouldn't be able to communicate again. And it's important for us to distinguish between those two types of customizations. We will be focusing primarily on customizations that help communication. We do customizations all the time for helping for internet access and all sorts of other things, Windows control, computer control. But today is going to be primarily focused on customizations to make communication either possible or easier. So to start, I guess I'd just like to give a little bit of background to what we call the eye tracking challenge, which is that well-designed eye tracking technology and equipment and devices, they'll work fine under ideal conditions. And what do we mean by ideal conditions? If the user is unobstructed, their eyes are unobstructed there's an unobstructed view to the eye tracking device, if they are properly positioned, if they have the ability to focus, if someone is not wearing glasses, that's more ideal than if they are wearing glasses. And if they do have glasses, a single prescription lens will be easier for the eye tracker than progressives or trifocals. And no sunlight makes things better. So all of those would be ideal conditions, but unfortunately, we don't often have ideal conditions when we're working with someone with ALS. And even if we do have better conditions, they can change throughout the progression. And we'll be talking a lot about that, what things can change and what we can do about them. And thankfully, there are so many great SLPs and AAC specialists across the globe, many of them on this call, who actually make these technologies work for PALS and overcome these obstacles. And that is really the most amazing thing. So I just like to define what we mean when we say customizations. So we're really referring to modifications to eye tracking software to mitigate the effects of poor eye tracking accuracy. Now, poor accuracy can be due to many factors, some of which we mentioned before. It may be due to poor positioning. It may be due to ptosis, a droopy eyelid. It may be poor lighting. And most often, at least in our experience, is the effects of medications on eye tracking accuracy is very significant. And that's something that we keep running into that on a daily basis, and we keep learning more and more about which meds have a bigger effect on the eye tracking accuracy. And we'll go into that a little bit more later on, especially because those can really make a difference as to what customizations we make. Now, just out of curiosity, it would be nice to know how many of you, and you could answer this on the chat, how many of you have ever edited your communication software, made a button bigger, moved a button around, maybe just changed the text or the colors. We just are curious to know what experience everyone has with editing communication software. And we will be hopefully broadening your imagination and what can be done in some of these pieces of software. There are many levels of customizations. You can make a simple customization and that will have a very high impact. And then there are some more very advanced customizations, which sometimes even the companies themselves don't realize how powerful their devices are and how flexible they are and what can be done to really help PALS communicate better. So I'm going to try to give a taste of a few different levels today so that you can understand what we do and what we'd love to do further and help more people across the country. I'd just like to mention a story that happened in 2012, and this sort of changed my approach to helping PALS with their eye trackers. So I was working with a PALS who had a very difficult time with his eye tracking. And we called tech support many times. We uninstalled software, we updated things. We even sent the device back probably 4 or 5 times. And eventually, the tech support person said to me on one particular call, "Sir, you have to understand that not everyone can use an eye tracker." And that was really disturbing to me. And the reason was not because it's not true necessarily. Maybe there are some people that can't use it, but that can never be an excuse why we don't try to help everyone use an eye tracker. We have to understand why it's not working. If someone's eyes are closed, okay, we understand why it's not working. We can still do something about that, but at least we understand why it's not working. But if I'm working with a PALS and I see their eye moving and their eyes are wide open and the eye tracker doesn't see their eyes moving, then we need to understand why it's not picking up what we see. And that's really important for us to just roll up our sleeves and never give up and hide behind an excuse that not everyone can use an eye tracker. And you'd be surprised that most people can. In that particular case, by the way, the story was that we called in Mark Zarabian, who had a lot of eye tracking experience at the time, and he brought in a different vendor's eye tracking device. And we were able to realize that the PAL's eyes were dilated because of a scopolamine patch. And as soon as they tapered him off of the patch, his eye tracking became completely accurate and wonderful. So the story had a good ending, and thankfully, we've since then learned about more medicines and more things that impact eye tracking, and we'll discuss that soon. So the first question that we have to really ask ourselves is, can we improve the PAL's physical eye tracking accuracy and avoid software customizations altogether? And that's really important, because if you can get the eye tracker to do a better job at seeing the eyes and get rid of all of the issues, you may not need software customizations in the first place. And some of our previous presentations, one of which was given by Trinity, those presentations discuss a lot about some of those other issues. I'll go into a couple over here just to mention them, and we will also be giving out a nice flow chart as a handout to help you troubleshoot some of those more common errors or common issues. So, can we fix the position of the user relative to the device? Can we get rid of the sunlight? Are their glasses interfering? Simple thing to troubleshoot. You take off the glasses and just see if that's causing the accuracy issue. If it is, they may still need to wear their glasses, but at least we know where we have to focus our attention. Are they on medications which may be impacting their eye tracking accuracy? And is there something wrong with the device? Sometimes there's just something wrong with the eye tracking device, and the only way to really troubleshoot that is by giving it to someone else and asking them to try it. And if it works there, then we know the device is good. And if it doesn't work there, like I just had this a couple of months ago, none of the people in that household were able to get that eye tracker to work, and it actually was a defective device. So an important thing to troubleshoot. Is someone's NIV mask possibly blocking the camera's view of their eyes? Or is the NIV mask pushing up on their cheeks, closing their eyes a little bit? Does the PALS have a ptosis, say cataracts, nystagmus, strabismus, or did they have cataract surgery and the artificial lens is interfering? So all of these are important things to figure out before you decide to start actually customizing software. Here is a picture of our flow chart, which we will be handing out, so you don't have to read this now, but most of the common issues that affect PALS and their eye tracking accuracy are on this page, with some ways of figuring out if that's the issue going on. And this is a very handy and useful flow chart to keep in your pocket. And it's funny that although we deal with this every single day, it's always helpful to actually go back to the flow chart itself and just go through the list again, because it reminds you of things that you may have forgotten. Now, let's just say you've gone through the flow chart and you know what's going on. You know what's causing the inaccuracies. So now is when you have to decide, do you fix the inaccuracy or do you go and move on to software modifications? So here are some examples of times where software customizations probably make more sense. If a PALS has severe muscle spasms and they're on a high dose of baclofen, then it's more likely that you're going to have to deal with this and compensate with software modifications, because they probably can't go off of the baclofen, and so you can't improve the raw accuracy of the eye tracking device. We'll talk more about my arch enemy baclofen in a few minutes, okay? Just only because that particular medication comes up all the time. Allergy, cough, and saliva reducing meds, they will cause often a severe dry eye, or they'll dilate the eye. In fact, I once had a PALS that had been a perfect eye tracking user, and one day they called that the eye tracking machine did not see them at all. They were sitting in front of it, perfectly positioned, and the track status didn't show any eyes, and it ended up being a cough medicine. I've never seen it so pronounced before or after, but it's to that extent that the cough medicine made it that the eye tracker did not see his eyes, which were wide open, and I saw them perfectly. PALS with a slow blink or slow moving eyes, that's another challenge where you're not going to be able to help that on the device side, but on the software side, there are a lot of ways to help that situation. Ptosis, dry eyes, and cataracts, again, they are what they are, and you may not be able to fix them, but you can modify the software. And someone who's hypersensitive to light can also be a very big issue, where when the screen turns bright, their eyes dilate so much that the eye tracker doesn't see their eyes. So that's another place where we would probably be doing software modifications and not trying to do anything between the user and the device. So the first step in really, before we're going to get to these software modifications right away and the demos, but the first thing is that you have to really understand what the issue is that you're trying to resolve. And this is so critical, because sometimes we know that making buttons bigger in communication software will often help to give someone a better shot at hitting a target, but often making a button bigger can actually make the problem worse. And just a good example, if you have a PALS that has a board where they have a button on the board that takes them to another page, and you see that the PALS is constantly alternating between those two boards, keeps going back and forth, and can't seem to get to the place they want to go. So sometimes you may want to just go and make buttons bigger to help that situation. But very often, the reason why they're having that issue is because the button that gets them to page 1, when they get to page 1, there's a button in that same area that takes them back to page 2. And if the PALS can't move their eyes off of that target quick enough, then they're just going to keep going between those two pages back and forth. And they're just going to have to like take some shot at getting off of the thing whenever they can. So in those cases, making the buttons bigger would actually make the problem worse because they'd have a bigger area of button to have to move off of. So it's important to understand the problem you're trying to address. And if you do understand that problem, you'll have a much greater chance at being able to customize the software and fix it. Okay, I'm sorry if I was speaking a little bit quickly, but I really wanted to be able to get to some of the demonstrations so that you should all be able to see what we're actually discussing here. And then anyone who has any questions or anything, you'll please make sure to ask them at the end of the presentation and we'll go over everything. So we're going to start, I'm going to go between Grid software and Communicator 5 because those are the two, most of our customizations have been made for both of those communication packages. Most communication packages support all of these customizations. Some of the more advanced ones are not so well supported, and I'll explain them as we get to them. So the first thing, I'm going to share my screen now to actually go to, I'm going to actually share the grid screen so that we can go and show some of these. A very popular customization that we have is to enable people to use a QWERTY keyboard better. If you've ever seen an inaccurate eye tracker, so I'm sure you've seen where if they're trying to type hello, they're looking at the H and their eyes are going between two letters. And like everyone on this call probably has seen this, and it's so frustrating. It gives us all the chills. And then they're trying to type hello, and instead they press the J. Then what happens? You press backspace, and the second time, you very likely hit the J again, because whatever inaccuracy caused you to hit the J the first time, maybe makes you hit it the second time, or 15th or 20th time. It's extremely frustrating. So this board has a really simple customization. If you're trying to type hello and you hit the J, you get two big buttons on the top left and right of the screen. The two buttons are on the left and right of the key that you hit. If you meant to hit the H, although the J is there in the message window, if you click that big H, it error corrects what's in the message window, and there you got your H. And instead of having to do this 15 times and waste 30, 40 clicks and all of that energy, you can correct this instantly. So this is a very simple customization which can be done in any communication software, and it can potentially save a pals hundreds to thousands of clicks in one day. And just translate that into the energy, the frustration, the fatigue that will save. So that's a very simple one. Now, let's take that same board, we're going to take that to another level. So let's say someone's inaccuracy is a little worse than that. It's not like they keep looking at the J and the K. They really can't focus on the H. Like they may hit any of these buttons around the H. So here, if they hit the H, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. Well, let's make believe I was trying to do the G, because I don't want to give away the secret yet. Okay, let's say I'm trying to write the word great, and instead I hit the letter H. When you hit the backspace, this pops up with all the letters that are around the H. So if you meant to hit the G, you now have a big G in a pop-up, and the only things you can activate on this screen right now are these buttons that are here. So if you meant the G, you hit the G, and that will replace the H in the message window with a G. So it's the same concept as the previous board, but this one is really much better for someone who's more inaccurate. And one of the really cool things about this particular board, let's say you wanted to hit the prediction that says great, and instead you hit the T. So watch this. If you hit the backspace, it gives you the predictions too in that pop-up. And there will be people who won't understand even how that's possible to do. But yeah, it is possible. And then you hit the word great, and then the prediction comes up. So this board is another really effective, pretty simple to implement, but a very effective board for giving someone the ability to quickly correct for errors that were made. Now, the next board that I want to show, actually, I'm going to stay in Communicator here for a minute. The next board I want to show is one that we use probably almost every day. Someone on our team installs this board probably every day. And we call it our QWERTY9 Quick Backspace. So this board has in it a bunch of our customizations all in one place. I'll just mention some of the more popular ones. So the first thing that you have here is a really cool thing, which is it's a QWERTY9. Really, you need 10 buttons across the screen to be able to house a QWERTY keyboard. But if you do something illegal and you move the P, which is normally on the side of the O, and you move it under the L, then you can now have a QWERTY9, and you can get 10% more area in width in every button across the screen. So that customization alone has helped many pals just overcome their inaccuracy, and that they can use this board just the way it is without any extra customizations. But then there's another thing that we use very often, something like the clear all. If somebody's typing and whatever they want to clear all. So what we do is we put in the confirmation for clear all, we put in the backspace and the speak buttons. And the reason is, if someone's trying to get the clear all button, or I'm sorry, someone's trying to get the backspace or the speak, they may inadvertently hit the clear all button. So why not give them a backspace and a speak right here? So if they hit that button by accidentally, they still can just go and hit a nice big backspace and speak button without having to try again and again to do the same thing over. So that's just another simple one. But one of the really exciting customizations in this board is what we call smart backspace. And that is if you're trying to type hello and instead you hit the J. So when you press backspace, the J disappears. Because just like we all know you didn't want that J, the computer should also know that you don't want it. And if, let's say, the next time you hit the G, now there's just the G there. When you hit backspace, well, we know you didn't want the J or the G. Eventually, if you hit enough buttons and you keep backspacing, the computer should know you didn't want any of those buttons, and eventually you're going to have a very easy time targeting that H, and then you'll get it. This smart backspace coupled with the QWERTY9 is being used by, I don't know the exact number, but probably 50 pals across the country right now are using this board, and they're using it very, very effectively. So that's an exciting thing. And all of these boards are available. You just have to sign in and ask for, any of our customized boards, and we do make them available. So these are some of the boards for helping lower that level of fatigue, give some error correction. But here's another board I want to show you, which is, this one is one that actually has given back a bunch of pals the ability to communicate that they had really lost. So this board is simply a two-step keyboard. Now, if anyone is acquainted with some of the boards in smart boxes in the Grid 3, there's a really nice two-hit keyboard over here, which allows you to first choose the group of letters your target is in. And then if you want to type hello, then you choose the H. So it's a two-step process in order to actually type. It has predictions. It really has, this is a wonderful keyboard for someone whose accuracy allows them to control it well. But if if their accuracy is not that good, so we have a much bigger two-step keyboard with bigger buttons, which is the upper buttons and the lower buttons are separated by the message window, so you won't get any inaccuracy on that front, on the vertical side. And since the buttons are so big, very often our pals are able to just start typing even without a calibration and just go straight to their typing. But we're not going to this is not just a regular two-step keyboard. There are some other customizations. I'm going to skip some of the other ones because I want to get to the main point of this board. This board is to help people who have a few issues that conflict, the solutions conflict with each other. So if you have someone that has poor accuracy, so they need to have big buttons, right? That's the first thing. Now let's say they also have an issue focusing on a target for longer than a second, or even they have trouble focusing even longer than half a second. So for pals like that, they're going to have a really hard time because in order to, if the eye tracker keeps losing their eyes and they can only focus for maybe half a second or 700 milliseconds, they're going to have a very hard time targeting things and then getting to their next target and trying to keep up with what they're trying to do, what they're trying to spell. And then to make matters almost impossible, if you have someone who their eyes are a little bit sluggish and they can't travel across the width of a button that quickly, you really have two problems that seemingly can't be solved. They have to have a very quick dwell, but they also need time to travel across to the next button. So they'll never be able to type under normal circumstances. And there are many pals across the country that fall into this category. And what we've done for that is in Grid 3 and in Communicator 5 is we set up a situation where the dwell time is set at a very, very quick dwell, 500 milliseconds or less. And after each time the PALS activates a button, the eye tracker is paused so that nothing is happening for the next 1 to 10 seconds. So the PALS has an opportunity to take their time to travel to their next target. They get to the H, they wait there until the 6 or 10 seconds is up, and then there's a 400 millisecond dwell activation, and they get their target. Now this has helped so many people who had lost the ability to communicate, and it gave them back communication. And I do have for you, I'm going to show you a 1-minute video, which was actually an 8-minute story. But I just want to tell you how emotional this video really is. This is a video of someone who was a master Tobii eye tracking user for 13 years. And something happened, probably it was his medications, and he did not communicate for 2 years. He could not type even a single word on his Tobii. And Team Gleason had referred him to us, and we introduced him to the 8-button board. And in this session, which was the first session that he ever tried the 8-button board, you're seeing a recording of what happened. This was, our team realized what was going on and asked him for permission to record it. This is the actual thing that happened. Someone who, it's going 8 times the speed though, so that you shouldn't have to wait the whole 8 minutes. This is him writing an email using the 8-button board. So that is the difference between using a board that's working for someone who completely could not communicate. And the first time he tried this 8-button board, he was able to write a complete email. And he just became, again, the most communicative person, emails and text constantly. So very important to remember that. Okay, I'm going to start talking just a drop more quickly so that we'll be able to have time for questions, but I do need to show you 1 or 2 more boards that are extremely important. So here is what we call our translating board. A lot of people, a lot of pals have caregivers that don't speak the same language as they do. And a lot of people have family who they don't speak the same language. So here is a board that we've been using for the last couple of years, which is our own little program. This isn't something you can program with the communication software by itself. It has our own little external software on the side. But if you type something, hello, hello, how are you all doing today? I can't even see that because of the share. I hope it's spelled right. Okay, so if I go into the translate button and I hit Spanish, there'll be a little bit of a delay after I click it.
Hola, ¿cómo están todos hoy? Estoy disfrutando esto.
Was everybody able to hear that? Yes, okay. So this is, now there's 2 things. Number 1, isn't that cool? You didn't have to go out to Google Translate to do it. You could do this straight from Communicator or from the grid. But also, if you'll notice, the quality of the voice was an extremely high quality voice. Let's try it in French.
Bonjour, comment allez-vous tous aujourd'hui? J'apprécie ça.
And if you want to hear it in English in a high quality voice.
Hello, how are you all doing today? I am enjoying this.
So this is our program taking the message window and going and sending it to Google Translate in the background and using Google's premium quality voices, their AI voices, to go and produce the audio. And then it brings it back and it plays the audio. Now, what's really interesting is that even though there is a little bit of a latency the first time you translate something, if you reuse it, it happens instantaneously.
Hello, how are you all doing today? I am enjoying this.
And that's because everything that you translate gets saved locally on your computer as an audio file, so that if you want to speak somewhere publicly, you can prepare it, and then you could use it without even being connected to the internet at all. And you can do this with a premium quality voice. So this is really, really exciting. Now, something I'd like to show you, another feature that this enables us to do is, if let's say you wanted to pause, let's say you wanted to put a little pause after the first sentence. So we have our own codes, and I'm going to show you 2 different ways, but we have like a little coding system. So if I put B2, that code, which is something we made up, means that we want it to break for 2 seconds. So I'm going to do it now with the break.
Hello, how are you all doing today? I am enjoying this.
So there are all sorts of codes that can be put into the message window, that when they're translated by Google's AI voice, they will make those codes be translated on the fly, and you can do all sorts of very, very cool things. I'm going to show you one really quickly.
Hey, Malcolm, Ashley has a quick question. She wants to know, is it only available in these languages or any language that Google Translate offers?
Great question. It's almost any language that Google Translate supports. There is Google has a special list for this particular thing, but it's like 170 languages or so. So it really does, it will support that. Those are just the ones I just dumped on there just to have a quick sample to show you. So take a look at this. I'm going to go into my phrases. Let me first clear this out. I have in here a joke. So take a look. There's what do you call a fake noodle? With the break time, this is the way the code would have to be written if you were using Google's official way to do the codes. We've been making shortcuts for it. But then there's also something at the end over here. You're able to put audio files into the middle of what you're speaking. So watch this one.
What do you call a fake noodle? An impasta.
Okay. Did you ever see a communication device do that? Come on. Okay. So this is another very, very exciting update that we've been working on for a while. And we do have someone, I don't know if he's on the call, but we do have someone who has been using this for the last month or two. And he just recently spoke publicly using this system. He chose a British voice, and the British voices are really, really high quality, by the way. Just to you could hear it. It's actually going to give the male laugh with it, though.
What do you call a fake noodle? An impasta.
Okay, that's how computers work for you. But this is very, very exciting. So I'm going to leave the translating board, and I'm going to just get to the last one. Last customization. We also wanted to show you a lot of those customizations are ones that we have been working on to make them really available for everyone so that you can just download those customized boards from our website and you can really just get going with them instantaneously. But one of the things that we specialize with at Bridging Voice is that we work with PALs every day to figure out what each PAL's needs. No one's needs are the same. So here's a good example of a board. Someone who's using our QWERTY 9 board with the smart backspace. So if you hit the G and then you press backspace, so the G disappears, right? But this particular PALS has a very difficult time with the extreme right and left sides of his eye tracker. So because of that, what we did was if he's trying to get the O, very often he's going to hit the I instead. So what we did for him, when he hits backspace after hitting an I, the O becomes bigger. So this way, in case he was trying to get the O, he can get it. Now, the worst case is if he hits the U by accident, he'll hit backspace, and then his O will be big, his U will be gone. And this gives him the ability to zero in onto the exact target and button he was looking for. He has an extremely difficult time getting to the bottom right corners too. The M, he has an artificial cataract lens that causes him to have a very difficult time with the M, the period, the P, clear word. That whole area is a mess for him. So when he hits close keyboard, it brings up a pop-up that allows him to just get those buttons into the center of the screen, into big buttons, and allows him to get his targets. So I hope everyone just realizes what can be done with the software, all of the amazing features that the software gives us to allow us to do these types of customizations. And we're really hopeful that you'll get in touch with us when you need them. And let me just to get to our takeaways. For the takeaways are, you need to first address all of the physical accuracy issues. Hopefully our flowchart will help you out a lot over there. You need to completely understand the issue you're trying to resolve. Someone has a hard time with buttons on the extreme right and left of the screen. Another good example of a very specific problem, and the solution will be specific as well. Don't underestimate the power of simple customizations. Making buttons bigger is still often the entire solution to your problem. So that's important. And if it's something that you need,